Vikings. The word probably conjures up an image of a hulking, bearded brute in a horned helmet, roaring as he leaps from a longship axe in hand, ready to plunder. For centuries, this has been the popular picture: savage, bloodthirsty raiders who brought terror to the coasts of Europe. But what if I told you that much of what we think we know about Vikings is a myth, a caricature painted by their enemies and embellished by Hollywood? Today, we're going to peel back the layers of legend and uncover the fascinating, complex, and often surprising truth about the real people of the North. Get ready to have your perceptions shattered as we journey back in time to meet the true Vikings. First, let's tackle the most iconic piece of Viking gear, the horned helmet. It's everywhere in movies, cartoons, and even on the helmets of the Minnesota Vikings football team. It's the definitive symbol of a Viking warrior. The only problem, it's completely fake. Archaeologists have excavated countless Viking graves and settlement sites, and they've found exactly 0 horned helmets from the Viking Age. So, where did this idea come from? Well, it's a bit of a historical mix-up. Some historians believe it was a propaganda tool used by Christian chroniclers to portray the pagan Norsemen as demonic, devil-like figures. The image was then cemented in the popular imagination in the 19th century. Thanks to a costume designer for a German opera, he thought adding horns to the helmets made the Viking characters look more dramatic and fierce on stage. And just like that, a legend was born. So if they weren't wearing horned helmets, what did real Viking warriors wear into battle? The answer is much more practical and far more effective. A typical Viking helmet was a simple, conical, or rounded cap made of iron, sometimes with a nose guard for extra protection. It was designed for one purpose: to deflect sword blows and protect the head. No horns, no frills, just functional, life-saving armor. But their craftsmanship didn't stop at helmets. The Vikings were exceptional blacksmiths. Their most prized weapon was the sword, and the best ones were masterpieces of metallurgy. They used a technique called pattern welding, where they twisted and forged together rods of hard and soft iron. This created a blade that was incredibly strong and flexible, sharp enough to cleave through mail and bone, yet resilient enough not to shatter. These weren't just crude chunks of iron. They were high-tech weapons, often decorated with intricate inlays of silver and copper, passed down through generations as treasured heirlooms. A Viking warrior was not a wild barbarian with a horned hat. He was a well-equipped, highly skilled, professional soldier. Now, let's move on to another persistent myth: the idea that Vikings were dirty, smelly, and completely uncouth. The stereotype paints them as grimy barbarians who cared little for personal hygiene. It's a convenient way to portray them as uncivilized. But again, the historical and archaeological evidence tells a completely different story. In fact, Vikings were surprisingly obsessed with cleanliness, especially compared to their European contemporaries. Excavations of Viking sites have unearthed a huge number of personal grooming tools. We're talking about combs made of bone or antler, often beautifully decorated. We've found tweezers, ear spoons for cleaning wax, and even razors. These weren't just for the wealthy. Grooming kits have been found in the graves of ordinary men and women. They clearly took pride in their appearance. Historical accounts from other cultures back this up. An Arab diplomat named Ibn Fadlan, who met Vikings on the Volga River, noted their meticulous grooming habits. More tellingly, an English chronicler in the 13th century complained that the Viking men were far too popular with English noblewomen because they combed their hair daily, bathed every Saturday, and changed their clothes regularly. That's right, they had a designated bath day, lagerdagur, in Old Norse, which literally means washing day and is the origin of the modern Scandinavian words for Saturday. So, far from being filthy savages, the Vikings were likely some of the cleanest and best-groomed people in medieval Europe. The final, and perhaps biggest myth, is that the Viking world was all about raiding and warfare. We tend to think of every Norseman as a warrior, whose only ambition was to pillage monasteries and burn villages. While raiding was certainly a part of their culture, a quick and high-risk way to gain wealth and status, it was only one facet of their society. To label all Vikings as raiders would be like calling all Americans cowboys. The reality is that the vast majority of Vikings were not warriors. They were farmers, tilling the harsh northern soil to support their families. They were herders, fishermen, and, above all, incredibly skilled craftsmen. They built some of the most advanced ships of their time, vessels that were both strong enough for the open ocean and had a shallow enough draft to navigate far upriver. This maritime genius wasn't just for raiding. It was the foundation of their success as traders and explorers. The Vikings were masters of the long-distance trade route. Their network stretched from the icy waters of Greenland to the bustling markets of Constantinople and Baghdad. They traded furs, amber, and walrus ivory for silver, silks, spices, and glass from the Byzantine and Islamic worlds. They established trading towns like Dublin in Ireland, and their influence shaped the economic landscape of Europe. This drive to explore and trade led them to achieve one of the most remarkable feats in human history. Long before Christopher Columbus set sail, Viking explorers led by Leif Erikson landed on the shores of North America around the year 1000. They established a small settlement in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, a place they called Vinland. They were the first Europeans to reach the New World, a testament to their unparalleled courage, navigational skill, and unquenchable thirst for discovery. They weren't just destroyers. They were creators, builders, and connectors of worlds. So, when we look past the caricature of the horned-helmeted berserker, we find a culture of incredible depth and sophistication. The real Vikings were not one-dimensional monsters from a dark age. They were skilled artisans who created beautiful art and powerful weapons. They were hygiene-conscious individuals who valued their appearance. They were shrewd merchants whose trade networks spanned continents. And they were arguably the greatest explorers of their time, pushing the boundaries of the known world with nothing but wood, wind, and sheer determination. The myth is exciting, but the reality is far more impressive and infinitely more human. The story of the Vikings is not just a tale of raids and battles. It's the story of a dynamic and influential civilization that left an indelible mark on history. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to uncover the real Vikings. If you enjoyed debunking these myths, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments which Viking myth surprised you the most. See you next time.